Just wanted to go through a little bit about chainsawing and operating a chainsaw. Mainly aimed at the beginners or the people who aren't 100% sure on using saws. So there's no left-handed saw use. And again, a lot of these things, you'll see experienced people do them, I might do them, but as a starting point, I'll just generalize for people who are not super experienced. So right hand always goes on the rear handle. Left hand always goes on the wraparound handle, or the front handle. And your thumb needs to stay under. Gives you more control. It's like if you're riding a mountain bike downhill, you don't have your thumbs up like that because you just lose your grip. So always keep your thumb under. This is the chain brake and front handguard. The chain brake is to be disengaged like this. You keep your thumb under to have some control over the saw, and all of your fingers grab the top of the chain brake and pull it back. And now the chain spins. To engage the chain brake, back of the wrist. So it's very simple. Take the chain brake off, put the chain brake on. Try to avoid doing this. I knew a guy who went over, and I've heard stories about other people doing this, when they go to engage the chain brake, went like that, and he just nicked his hand pretty badly, but I've heard some pretty horror stories. So this and this might look good, but you don't need to do it. So try, if you are learning, to get in good habits. Habits will stay with you for the rest of your life, and you're going to do this for a long enough timeline, you're going to have accidents. So try and minimize unnecessary risk and stay in good habits. One of them being chain brake use. Off, on. Don't do this. And don't do this. Okay, just chain brake off, chain brake on. If you're struggling to get the chain brake on, don't try and hold it up and take it off. Just point it down. Like I can have one hand on it and I can do it. I rest it on my leg. Chain brake off, chain brake on. So try to not walk or move your feet with the chain brake disengaged. I see this a lot. I want to cut over there. Chain brake off, walk over, start cutting. When this is just avoiding unnecessary risk, just walk over, chain brake off, start cutting. It doesn't save any time, doesn't take any more time, it's kind of the same. So just walk over and then cut it. You can put the chainsaw on the log, take the chain brake off. Whenever you're starting the saw, double check your chain brakes on. So, as that rule, you don't want to move your feet when you're cutting. And experienced people will get a lot of complacency. So, you'll see me do it, a lot of my videos. I'm walking around without the chain brake on. I'm doing lots of things without the chain brake on. And that is complacency. I try to do the right thing and try to keep myself safe as much as possible, but I don't always succeed. But as long as you're trying to do it. So for absolute beginners, I would advise, every time you move your feet, put the chain brake on. Wait for the chain to stop spinning, never snap it on unless it's an emergency. Wait for it to stop spinning, put the chain brake on, move, and then disengage and continue cutting. There was a guy, I was training a class, and I was talking about this, and the guy popped his head in to say hello, an old friend. And I said, have you seen any accidents with chainsaws? And he says, yeah, yesterday. So there were some storms went through here a few years ago, about 2 years ago, and there was a climber cutting on the ground. So the climber should know what he's doing. You know, fed the chipper through enough and then learned how to use chainsaws and then started climbing. So I'm assuming he was an experienced guy. I didn't know who actually cut himself, but a climber, all the same, cutting on the ground. He was using a similar sort of this, cutting, and what happened was he went to walk. While the chain's still spinning, he was in a rush and he started to move. He slipped, and as he slipped, he's grabbed the spinning chain, and it's damn near cut his hand off. So that's a true story. I think it was like 6 months plus of rehabilitation for his hand. So complacency kills. Don't rush, let the chain slow down, chain brake, start moving. So always use your chain brake. Another thing I'll talk about, and There's a few key points to using chainsaws. Don't hit the dirt. Hit the dirt, you gotta sharpen your saw. Don't use a blunt saw. Another key point to chainsaw use is, and I try not to swear, but I find it just hits this home a bit. Don't look at the fucking chain. If you're looking at the chain, that's where it's gonna kick back to. It's not gonna kick back out there or out there. It's gonna kick back in the kickback line, okay? So if I'm looking at the chain, that's where it's gonna kick back to. What I prefer to do, instead of looking at the chain, look at the side of the bar. And you don't need to look at it when it's cutting, okay? Once it starts cutting, it's going. Just get it lined up and then cut. And right now, that kickback line of the bar is right over my head. So right over my shoulder. So you can sacrifice an ear, surely, but you don't want to get what's commonly called in the forestry industry as a letterbox head. So where this comes up and cuts your face in half and you can post a letter in there. So you want to avoid that. So don't let anything be in the kickback line. So watch my stance here. I'm in close, using my body, straight arms for basic cutting, and I naturally want to look at the chain. So all I'm going to do with my head is I'm going to move my head off a little bit. My body doesn't move, I just move my head off a bit. So now this chainsaw kickback line is going up here, missing my head. And I've had this kickback before on a bigger, similar size saw, a 66, and it kicked back, full throttle, and I remember looking at the full throttle chain right here. It was very scary, but I always remember that because I didn't have my head in the kickback line. So try and avoid spending any time in that kickback line. If I'm cutting here, or better yet, you can see this. If I'm cutting here, the camera's right in the kickback line. So if it's gonna kick back, it's gonna go right back there and hit you. So don't let anything ever be in the kickback line. So I had a guy, a friend, a very, very good friend of mine up in Mount Buller in Victoria. Before I was even in trees, this happened. He was cutting a tree down. He put his scarf on this side and the tree wanted to go that way. And his mate came in to push the tree. As a rule of thumb, never push a tree. Use wedges, ropes, skill, whatever. Don't ever push a tree. Unless we're talking about little saplings or whatnot, fair enough. But real trees, don't ever push them because it's dangerous. They can slab up and kick back and get you. What happened was he was cutting, my mate, and the other guy came to push. The chainsaw didn't go all the way through the wood. So there's a wall of wood here and it kicked back and it came in and got him right there. Luckily it didn't hit his old fella, but it did go in, his chaps went down there. It did go straight into his leg and cut through his femoral artery. That was on the slopes of Mount Buller during summer. Luckily my friend had, geez, I can't even remember his name. A long time ago. He had first aid training from the courses he was doing up there, and he put a tourniquet on and saved the guy's life. But the lesson to take away from that story is don't ever let anyone in that kickback line. Whatever angle it is, if you're cutting like that, don't let anyone in that kickback line. So when I go to cut, I'm using my body quite a bit because it's a heavy saw. If I use my arms all the time, I get tired. Something I might try and move this out of the way. So you want to be nice and comfortable. Don't be afraid of the saw and stand off like this because it's hard on your arms and you have less control. Get in close. Point. This is just a general rule to help learners. Point your feet towards where you're cutting. And that way you're all in line. And you can drop to a knee nice and easily without going in that kickback line. And it's just a nice and easy because I can use the chainsaw against my legs. People who stand with their feet facing sideways, or I believe the word perpendicular, I don't know, I'm not a genius. So if you cut like this, as soon as, like even cutting now, it's hard to get my head out. Gotta hold my head back. As soon as I do lean over a bit, I'm straight in that kickback line. My neck, my head, whatnot. So try and orientate your feet towards where you're cutting and cut in a nice line. And just move your head slightly off. A little tip to not hit the dirt is to put your chainsaw down on the ground as you're cutting, put the butt down, and then as your chainsaw sits flat, the bar's got a couple of inches off the ground there. So there's just a couple of ways to not hit the dirt. So chop down, 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 roll it over, and then nick the other side. That'll avoid hitting the dirt.
So I did record a whole lesson on this when I cut up this ironbark, but I didn't turn my mic on, so I'm an idiot. But here is the footage of it. So just watch the way I cut here. I try and keep my top arm straight. See, I'm resting it on my leg there. I'm just checking the fuel, but you should never bend your top arm, and rest it on your knee. That's lazy cutting, and you have no control over kickback. And what I'm teaching here is basic chainsaw use. So experienced workers will operate differently because they understand risks and everything, and they can just operate differently. So when I talk about keeping a straight arm, I'm talking about absolute beginner. See, my arm's straight there, cutting down. And I'm just cutting this log up so it drops on the ground, so I can easily cut up firewood. Sometimes you got to go and pick spots, cut through it, and then you can cut firewood. So walking with the chain brake on, take the chain brake off when I get there, and then keep a straight arm. So I'm cutting, I'm relatively in line with my cutting. I'm not off to the side, so my feet are kind of pointing towards where I'm cutting. And that way I can keep my head out of the kickback line really well. So I've got my thumb wrapped under the handle, and I'm keeping that straight arm. And there's no problem getting down onto your knees. It's a lot easier to shuffle along. As you can see, I'm cutting down, but not cutting to the ground, because there's a strap along the bottom see, I cut through it there. So now I can roll that log over, and I can just cut those little straps on the back there. I can either put the bar in and cut up, which I do because I'm tall and it's easier on my back to use my body like that, or you can cut down. At least I know if I'm putting the bar in and cutting up, I'm definitely in line. So chain brake on and walk over, then take chain brake off. So I'm pretty big on unnecessary risk. To be honest, I'm a pretty reckless guy. Take a lot of risks and everything. So maybe that's why I've learned to not take unnecessary risk, because I take a lot of calculated risks. So even just walking around, I'll put the chain brake on a lot more than most of my peers and experienced workers. I'll put the chain brake on every time I move, when I'm thinking about it, of course. And then that avoids unnecessary risk. Because, like I said, you doing this career, or you're doing this work, or you're using chainsaws on the farm, over a long enough timeline, you're going to have an accident. And if you can avoid that being a big accident, then that's good for you. So why not avoid unnecessary risk? So I'm just putting the scarf cut in this tree. I didn't have the audio recording, so I'm just going to talk over it. But I'm putting the scarf cut in. I'm aiming just a little bit past where I want it to go, because I know the fibres in these trees, they're known to be very snappy, so it's not known to hold on very much. You can't bend them around very far. So I'm aiming it past where I want it to go, and it does actually snap out and not go exactly where I'm aiming it, but that was expected because I aimed it past the tree I'm trying to avoid, and it still didn't hit it. So this technique is great in forestry and low risk environment, because sometimes they do either hold on and go where you aim them, or they snap out way too early. So I'm putting the quarter cut in now so I can put my wedges in, and I'm shaving off some of the bark. It turns out to be extremely thick bark on this side of the tree, which I didn't really know until I dropped it, but I'm just shaving some of the bark off so I can more accurately place my wedges and know exactly how deep they're going without the bark getting in the way. Got my overkill sledgehammer here. I'm putting 2 wedges, you don't always need to, it depends on the tree, on the compression side. So I'm trying to lift the tree. The problem with doing this is you can lift it up and snap the fibres in the hinge wood, but I'm only going to put wedges on the side of compression, and then I'm going to complete my other quarter cut on the tension side, but I'm going to leave that hinge wood very thick, as you'll see in a moment. So I'm just going to put the wedges in, tap them in. I have a bit of trouble with these wedges. I'm hitting a bit of wood in there. I didn't do my quarter cut super well. So I'm hitting the end, so I go and get another wedge and put it in there. And I'm just lifting that compression side of the tree, and it should go over about now. As you can see, it goes over, but then kind of falls where it is leaning to. So you aim it past where you want it to fall. And so I aimed it out there, but it fell over there. But that was also missing the tree that I was trying to miss. So more hinge wood on the tension side. And here's me just cutting up some more. So this is just showing you to put the butt down first, and you want to hit the ground. When you're cutting stumps out, you must stay behind the power head. If you put your feet or hands out, like where I'm about to now, there's a risk of it kicking out and kicking back onto your leg. So again, unnecessary risk. Why cut like that when you don't need to? You can cut like this, and you can use your leg to lever the chainsaw. Put your dogs in and you use your leg. I'm doing it now to levering the chainsaw around. So a wise man once said, look at the laziest person on the work site and you'll find the easiest way to do every task. So it's kind of true in a way. You want to find the easiest way of doing everything. You're going to be doing this all day, every day if you're a tree worker. And if you're collecting firewood on a farm, then you still want to make it as easy as possible to preserve your energy, to be safer and to get more work done. So get behind the saw and use your leverage as much as you can. So thanks for watching, guys. I really appreciate it. I'm having a great time doing this. I'm glad everyone's watching, and we're going to keep doing it because I love it. Have a good one. See you later, guys.